Hey everybody, it's Melissa from Rens, and I'm here with my co-host Porter, who is very sleepy today, apparently. Welcome to another Vendor Friday series where we talk to our amazing Rens vendors. We learn a little bit about the background, the history of the company, and today we're talking with Doug from Stella and Chewy's. We are so excited. This was actually our most requested video, so we are so excited to share with you guys all about the company. So with that, Doug, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you. Wow, most requested video. Now I feel pressure. I didn't feel pressure before, but now I do. Okay, so yeah, my name is Doug Siegel. I'm with Stella and Chewy's. I've been with Stella and Chewy's almost since its inception. So I've seen the company grow from 2 employees to over 500, and it's been quite a journey. So how the company started. Our founder, Marie Moody, she had rescued Stella, and she was living in LA at the time. And I guess Stella told her at one point that she needed a boyfriend. So they went out and they found Chewy. Brought Chewy to the vet, and the vet said, I know this dog, I know the shelter, he's sick, and he's not gonna make it. And they were not taking good care of him. He had distemper as an adult. And so the vet was like, I wouldn't keep this dog. And obviously Marie couldn't do that. So she said, well, what can I do? What do you suggest? And he said, research food, research raw food. And this is probably over 20 years ago when the whole raw food thing was really just beginning. And it was starting on the West Coast, and she was in LA, and she did her research and she started preparing him a raw diet. And basically within 6 months, he had a complete turnaround in health, and just from changing his food. So no medicine, no anything, just from changing his diet to what he should be eating. And Stella was eating the same food. She had moved to New York during that time, and there were 2 pet shops in New York City that sold the raw diet. And she decided, you know what, if I'm willing to feed this way, there are other people willing to feed this way, and I'm going to start a raw food company and bring raw food to New York City. And that's what she did. And that's how it started, and it was just a lot of hitting the pavement and explaining to these pet shop owners what this was, because it was a new concept to most of them. We had to buy freezers for them and fill them with the food. And so we started out with frozen and freeze-dried. That was what we were known for. And it developed this cult following in New York. And then it started growing. We were able to ship freeze-dried across the US, so that was easy. We didn't need distribution. And that's how really the company got to be known. And in 2007, I think she started in 2003. 2007, we opened up our own manufacturing facility outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And that was our first plant. And since then, we're in our 3rd plant now. So we went from, say, 12,000 square feet to like now probably 250,000 square feet. So we are the #1 pet freeze-dried company in North America, like by a lot. Like that's really was our focus. And over the years, we expanded the freeze-dried line, expanded the frozen line, and then we decided, how can we get more of this great nutrition into pets. Pet shops started to have an alternative section back then because other brands were doing things in dehydrated and freeze-dried. And then, we decided, we want to be in the kibble aisle. So we came out with our baked kibble. That was our first line expansion after frozen and freeze-dried. And our baked kibble is coated in freeze-dried, so it has the raw component in there. And that really took off. We've since we expanded into Canada, I want to say about 7 years ago. That was when we first went into Canada. And it's funny, our distributor was like, he was really excited for the frozen, and I was like, wait till you see what the freeze-dried does. And the freeze-dried took off like it does everywhere. And we'll get into that a little later in the conversation. But it's grown now to an international brand. We have our frozen, we have our freeze-dried, we have our baked kibble, we have an extruded kibble, we have wet food, we have treats. So it's really a full line, pet food company, and we really are focused and on neighborhood pet shops. That's where we are. You're not going to find us in big box stores. We are really, give our focus to neighborhood pet because we know that's where people are going for advice. That's where they're actually talking to, like Wren's. That's where, the store staff is knowledgeable and they're talking to the pet owners about what's best for their pet. And so that's why we really focus on the neighborhood pet channel.
That's really cool. Actually, I was in store today and a man was checking out Stella and Chewy's, and he said, my dog had such bad allergies and issues, and this is the only food I can feed. And I was super excited to see what he was feeding. And just for everybody watching, you don't have to feed, say you feed another food that your dog does great on. You could do additives with Stella and Chewy, which I think is a really cool, there's so much variety in the product. There's patties, there's freeze-dried, there's the new dinner dust that you can sprinkle on, even if you just want to give a little bit of the freeze-dried or a little flavor to your dog's food. So I really like how there's so much variety in the product line. Now, how many proteins do you have, or do you have, any proteins for sensitive stomachs in particular?
Most of our diets are single source proteins. We have beef, we have chicken, we have lamb, we have duck, which is actually mixed with turkey. We have surf and turf. We have some of the exotics like a venison and a rabbit. So we have like a full line that you will be able to find something in our line that your dog can eat. I mean,
Yeah.
there's, and as far as the sensitive stomachs, freeze-dried is really very easy on their stomachs, and also the baked kibble is easier to digest. So it's really about that digestibility that, will help with any sensitivities.
Yeah, which is great because I know a lot of people come in with dogs that have sensitivities or can only eat single protein foods. So it's nice that they have the option. Like raw food is really great, but realistically it's not for everybody. So it is really nice to have the option like Stella and Chewy that they can do more of a scoop and serve, like a kibble type food, and they still get really good benefits from that food.
Correct. Yeah, it's, I feel like, our line, every pet parent can find something in our line that will be great for their dog.
We do have a couple questions from our audience. Our first question is, what do you suggest for picky eaters?
Okay, well, I love when consumers come in and say, my dog is so picky. That is because our first, it was always our freeze-dried was always the go-to for picky eaters because they go for it. They devour it. It's like a 99%, success rate with picky eaters on the freeze-dried. We always have samples in stores. Sometimes a dog in the store might be a little skittish and might not want to eat it in the store, and the pet parent might say, "Oh, my dog doesn't like it," but take it home. Your dog will like it. So, the freeze-dried to me is the most palatable because just think about it. It's our raw diet without the moisture, so it's that much more concentrated flavor of meat, and that's what the dogs are going for. So, as far as a picky eater, our freeze-dried are the patties, the meal mixers, as you mentioned earlier, the dinner dust, that's great for picky eaters. And, I know there are some people that like to add wet food to the dry food in order to make it more palatable. And so we have wet food in Tetra Paks for both dogs and cats. But yeah, I always love it. Like if I'm at a trade show or doing a demo and someone comes up and says, "Oh no, don't give it to my dog. He's not going to eat it. He doesn't eat anything." And then they take the freeze-dried and the owner is like, "What is that?" And that happens all the time. And we get letters all the time that I could not find anything for my dog to eat. I've tried everything. You saved my dog's life. The freeze-dried or whatever it was saved our dog's life. It's the only thing he'll eat. And as far as, the meal mixers as toppers you were mentioning earlier, it's a very easy thing because if the dog, likes his kibble or it's okay, like this is just going to make it more healthy. And, we say this, tell me how to boost your bowl. And that's about the meal mixers because you're giving them the palatability, but you're also giving them that raw nutrition, which is really important because, dogs are carnivores and they need some real meat in their diet to thrive. So, that's kind of been our philosophy. We always say some raw is better than none. And our freeze-dried raw is, that's what that is.
Yeah, that's great. I know my guys absolutely love Stella and Chewy, so I couldn't imagine a dog not wanting to eat it, but that's a great answer. Our next question is, are cat and dog products the same, or can they be interchangeable?
So no, I mean, the dog and cat products are specific. They are species specific. So the dog products are formulated for dogs, and as well as the vitamin and mineral pack that goes in them is for dogs, and same for cats. The major differences, and I'll talk about the frozen and the freeze dried. So our cat food has no fruits or vegetables. It is a 99% meat diet, where the dog food has between 5 and 10% organic fruits and vegetables, because the dogs need that, the cats don't. So, I can't say, I would never recommend, for a cat owner to feed the dog food or vice versa, but, to give it as a treat, as a supplement, that's fine, but, not as a complete diet, because they are formulated for, species specific.
Yeah, and that goes kind of with most dog food and cat food. Cats require different levels of taurine, etc. So make sure you're feeding the appropriate to the species. But that was a great question to ask, because I know with freeze dried, sometimes people think that they can swap it out. So it's good to know that one. Okay, our last question is there a difference between the raw chicken dinner patties and the freeze dried? So what's the difference between the two, and in terms of ingredients and even nutrients?
I'm glad you brought it up, because talking about this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. So at Stella and Chewy's, it's the same formulation. So our freeze dried and our frozen are exactly the same ingredients. Okay, so the only difference is the moisture, and that's taken out during the freeze drying process. So I just want to say because a lot of people say, oh, freeze dried, dehydrated, but they don't really understand what it is. So how we freeze dry, and I can talk about Stella and Chewy's. So we make our mixes, we form our patties or our nuggets, whatever we're going to make. Then they get frozen. Some will get frozen and go into packaging for frozen, and then some will get frozen and go into freeze dryers. And so what happens in the freeze dryer is the moisture is removed without cooking it. Okay, so basically the product is going to go from frozen to dry without ever thawing out. So you'll see it. If you see the freeze-dried patties and the frozen patties, they're the same form. They don't lose their form, because all you're doing, it gets really cold in there, and then a vacuum is pulled in the system. And I'll get a little scientific. The ice crystals in the frozen meat, they sublimate, which means it goes from ice to water vapor. It misses the liquid stage. So that's how you're able to remove the moisture without cooking it, as opposed to something that's dehydrated, usually starts out at room temperature. So the moisture in there is liquid, is water. It's liquid, so it has to be evaporated. And so heat needs to be applied for the evaporation process. Dehydrated is good, but you do lose some nutritional value, whereas with freeze-dried, you keep all the nutritional value minus the water. So we usually suggest, if you're feeding it as a complete diet, to rehydrate it with a little warm water. That way the dog is going to get the moisture that he needs. I mean, smaller dogs, they might not drink as much as big dogs. Like I have a new poodle puppy here, and he's eating freeze-dried, and he eats it dry because I know he drinks a lot of water. But, we do suggest, especially for cats, if you're feeding freeze-dried, definitely add the water, because they won't drink as much if they don't have to. But yeah, freeze drying is, it's just, you get all the nutritional benefits of the frozen raw diet with the convenience of a dry food and being shelf stable. And that's the beauty of freeze dried. And again, that's why it's so palatable and so healthy. I mean, a lot of people don't even, we did some consumer surveys, and we asked them, are you using this because it's raw? And they didn't even know it was raw. They just know their dogs loved it and it was really good for them. And so, again, Stella and Chewy's, ours is raw. I can't speak for other brands, but that's how it's done. And yeah, the freeze drying process, again, it's my favorite thing to talk about.
Which is really cool because if you want to feed the raw most of the time, but say you go to like your in-laws or camping, you can bring the freeze-dried patties with you, and it's a really great supplemental change without having to worry about affecting your dog's diet.
I would say every raw feeder should have a bag of freeze-dried in the house for those just-in-case moments. You run out, you forget to throw it out, you lose power, whatever it is. It's always good to have a backup.
Yes, definitely. I forget to thaw it all the time. So
Right.
I
And
need a bag.
the palatability of it, I mean, that's why, our kibble, our baked kibble, our raw coated baked kibble is coated with our freeze-dried powder. So every piece of that kibble in the raw blend and raw coated is coated with freeze-dried powder for that palatability and that extra kick of raw. It's a good introduction into the raw segment.
So there you go. For all the picky eaters, you can either do the kibble version or the freeze-dried. So that's great. Well, that's all of our questions today. So thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciated learning all about Stella and Chewy's. I know that our customers are going to appreciate it as well, everybody watching at home. Is there anything lastly you'd like us to know, Doug?
Well, I'll just say, if you guys have more questions about Stella and Chewy's, you can certainly ask, the Wren's staff. And if they can't answer your questions, you can always, call the company or email info@Stella and Chewy's, and they can, we have amazing customer service people, and they can help you with any question that you might have. But yeah, I mean, I suggest just try it. I'm gonna say everything's on sale next week. There's a big sale at Wren's next week. Everything's on sale. Try it. You'll see how, even if your dog isn't picky, you'll see how they react to the freeze-dried. They go crazy for it. So, find something in online and give it a shot. We'd love to have you be part of the Stella and Chewy's family.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody so much for joining us. And I guess you heard it here first that we are having a sale next week. So make sure to check out your local Wren's and check online, and we'll see you next week. See ya.